And now, the KVTA local news.
A convicted stalker who sent over 4,000 text messages to a Thousand Oaks woman he was apparently obsessed with faced sentencing this week. 34-year-old North Hills resident Raul Plancarte Hernandez and the victim dated briefly back in 2016 before she called it off and asked him to stop contacting her. Prosecutor Ben Marino tells KVTA News what the defendant did instead.
His contact with her initially was friendly, trying to rekindle the relationship. When she told him that that was never going to happen and to stop contacting her, he just continued to contact her incessantly at all hours of the day and night. He eventually started making threats towards her and any other man that he would catch her with.
The victim moved to a different town, switched jobs, got a new phone, but nothing could stop the defendant from stalking her until he was finally arrested sitting in his car outside of her home in Thousand Oaks last June. He ended up pleading guilty to 3 felony crimes, criminal threats, stalking, and computer-related crimes. The judge sentenced him to the time he'd already served in jail, which was 243 days since his arrest, and then ordered his release. The judge also placed him on 3 years formal probation and ordered him to stay away from the victim. Ventura City fire investigators trying to determine what caused a house fire on the west side of town yesterday afternoon. It was reported a little after 4:20 in the 400 block of North Olive Street. When firefighters arrived on scene, they found a single-family home with smoke and flames showing from the rear of the structure. Battalion Chief Doug Meiser tells KVTA News they had the fire knocked down in about 8 minutes, but it did cause extensive damage.
We have about $75,000 worth of damage to the residence itself, and then another $25,000 in content.
Meiser says the house was red tagged, and the Red Cross was called in to help the displaced resident who was at work at the time the fire broke out. He says one of their main concerns when they got on scene was to make sure no one was inside, and then also to keep the fire from spreading to surrounding structures. No injuries reported. Explosives were used yesterday to remove that giant boulder that fell onto Highway 150 on the Denison Grade near Ojai during Monday's storm. Caltrans spokesperson Michael Camo tells KVTA News about the operation.
There are some types of explosives that don't create a huge blast, but a powerful enough jolt that it cracks the rock. And typically, when we have the option to do the cracking option, that will allow it to break into smaller pieces that can be hauled off, and it does it with a minimum of disturbance to any nearby residents.
Officials remain concerned about the stability of other rocks along the Denison Grade and might deploy measures such as metal mesh or K-rail to protect the motorists. Fortunately, no cars were struck by the giant boulder when it fell on Monday. The roadway was cleared and reopened yesterday evening. Ventura police arrested what they say was a career criminal sitting in a stolen vehicle with a gun, stolen property, and a meth pipe. It happened yesterday morning in the 1600 block of Walter Street. Police say 24-year-old Nicholas Geber has been arrested 14 times in 3 years on drug charges, prowling, burglary, and vehicle theft. Over 100 campfire victims in Northern California living in campers on their own burned property are being forced to move for fear of losing critical federal recovery aid.
It's a no-win situation. I agree with everything that everybody's saying, and like I said, we can't afford to play chicken with FEMA.
Paradise City Councilman Steve Crowder said the council rescinded a previous ordinance after the federal government threatened to withhold cleanup funds. Rich Gualano, Newstalk 1590, KVTA.